a business. So I came in this business realistically. I would say that I really cut my teeth in residential mortgages. I grew up in a family that had property in Alabama and in Georgia, the East Side, DeKalb County, and also not too far away in Alabama. My dad's from Alabama. My mother's from Louisiana. So I grew up kind of with my dad, visiting small properties, taking care of his older brother's properties, my Uncle Willie. And so I got a chance to see the real estate game early in life, which was 9 o'clock at night, the phone ring, got to go get something out of a toilet, to, hearing real estate marketed so heavily, that it made me go back to it when I was in my early 20s. I would say maybe 22, 23. I got my first job at a mortgage company in Atlanta. And that's where I cut my teeth in residential mortgages. And I quickly learned the difference between non-conforming and conforming, because I was actually in the mortgage business when 9/11 happened. So I would say that most people who are listening now, if you go back to a guy my age and you look at, we're saying now that rates are high, interest rates are high, and this 7%, we can't buy a home. Well, when I first came in the mortgage business, the average conforming loan on a 720 borrower was literally 7.5% to 8.5%. Second mortgages were around 13 to 15%. And I cut my teeth in the days when Sears and Roebuck, if you remember that company, Sears and Roebuck would do like a lot of home equity lines, for different products around the house, tools and appliances and things of that nature. And you was paying 22 to 28%. And I'm talking about 96 through 2003. So I was in the mortgage business up until like 2002. And I changed paths, but luckily I got out of the business before we went into the stated loan era and those things that turned around, and I got caught up in a little bit later and going back into physical real estate, basically to put capital that I had made from other endeavors. So that's my start.
Okay. So let's start with the start. Let's start where the money's at. Let's start there. So everybody, by the way, but I will
Get
ask
right to it, right?
Yeah, I will ask Cedric some of your questions as well. You can put your question in the Q&A section and try to make them short if you can. That way he can answer as many as possible. But yeah, I want to ask you this. One of the things I found to be the hardest about going into any business, Cedric, is just knowing where the money resides, know where the money's at, right? There's a lot of conversation that people see online where where people are like, oh yeah, if I do this, like for example, the internet, people say, oh, there's money being made on the internet, right? And it's like, where's the money at, right? So people go and they open up an Instagram and they open up a TikTok and a Twitter, and they're like, okay, I'm waiting for the money to flow, and it's not flowing. So it's almost like you need a specific path to the money. And it seems like with real estate, you've had experiences where you went to places where the money did not reside, and then you said, okay, let me pivot over here to where the money does reside. What would you say, like right now in commercial real estate, the best money-making opportunities lie as far as what you have seen?
Value-add properties. And the reason is because,
explain that.
Okay, so a value-add property is a property that you add value, you buy and you add value to it. I think the expectation, so for me to answer that question correctly, I'm gonna say this really fast, because this is something that you just stated that from seriously being in the internet business. So the internet looks glamorous to someone on the outside looking in. America does a great job with marketing entertainment. So America also does a great job with marketing real estate. So in real estate, the money, when I say value add properties, I mean properties you buy, you add value to them. The money in real estate is in two things: human resources, which means putting your network together to be able to maintain your properties and repair your properties, and human resources, And then the second is in understanding how to add more value to your lease. So that's, when you're looking at a value add property, people let's use houses for example. You'll see a person, they'll buy a home, they'll fix it up, they'll rent it out, right? And then they bet on two things. The rental income really does not make you a lot of money, but the rental income literally allows someone to pay your bill, pay your mortgage for you to gain appreciation in that property over time. Well, in commercial real estate, that appreciation happens, but the appreciation in commercial real estate, realistically, most of the value in that is in the strength of your lease. So when I'm looking for a property, I do acquisitions. So when I'm looking for a property, not only am I looking for a property that is poorly maintained, I'm looking for a property that is basically 40% vacant, anywhere from 40 to 60% vacant. I'm looking for that. And if I can get the owner to a table to speak with him about his property, the first thing, if I get past step one with talking to him and getting him to at least entertain selling his property, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through his leases. When you're dealing with value-add properties and older properties, most of the leases are under market value. And what happens is when you see
what do you mean when you say under market value? You mean that the person paying the lease is paying less than the market price? I just want to explain just for those who are kind of new. Okay,
yes,
got it. So somebody's paying $4,000 when they really should be paying $5,000, that type of thing.
Exactly. And then here's why they're paying under market rent. They're paying under market rent because it's a distressed property. So the current owner, he can't ask market prices because he won't do the things that it takes for that particular property to compete. Now we buy properties that are pretty much on very our typical traffic count is going to be 30,000 cars per day. Nothing less than that. So if I can explain to your class, what that means is that when you're looking for a commercial property, you probably heard the phrase location, location, location. Mm-hmm. Well, literally, when you're looking for a commercial property, I basically cherry pick distressed properties in high traffic areas. So you got a high traffic rate, you got a property that's distressed, and that spells money to me. So if you want to ask directly where the money is, that's where your money is at.
So when you say distressed, why are some of these properties distressed? Is it because they don't have access to the capital that your company has that will be required for them to pull themselves out of distress? Because it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you find things that that are where the owner's just having trouble, right? Paying the bills or whatever, right? Is that how do you define distress? Let's start there.
Okay, so sometimes it could be the owner is just aged, he's older, he can't take care of the property. Sometimes the owner has passed, willed the property to family, children. Other times it's just the property is in, let's just say, for instance, is on a high traffic strip, but the property was built in 1978, so it needs a complete overhaul. If that person has if they've exhausted all their resources, then they may be in a position to where they can't go back and borrow money to fix the building, or they may not have a desire, because guess what? If I've got a building that's distressed and I've got 3 or 4 tenants, and then I may not want to attract 2 more tenants to my 2 empty spaces, because it's going to have to come out of my pocket to do tenant improvements, right? So it's just too many different scenarios to explain why properties are distressed. That's almost like going into a political conversation with why the hood is the way the hood is.
Okay.
It's a wide that is a very open-ended question, but they're just for many reasons.
Okay. So is there like some sort of a nationwide database that you might lean toward to find these properties, or just word of mouth, or how do you find out about a distressed property in the first place?
By staying in the streets. Our company, we still operate from a formula that was successful by our founders' parents. And that's pretty much, you go and you look for property where you think you want to be at. In the commercial world, LoopNet and CoStar are very big platforms to look for commercial real estate. By the time a property hit LoopNet, it's literally that guy, he doesn't want to sell, so he has to list it with a broker. But typically, for the type of properties that we buy and the properties that we find that make the most money, have the highest cap rates, man, we go look for them.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
If I want to be in Dallas, if I want to be in Tulsa, guess what? We go to Tulsa and we look.
Okay. So you go to Tulsa and you look. So I'm trying to visualize just the structure in terms of where the money comes at. So I'm gonna let you talk. I know I'm asking a lot of questions out of my own curiosity.
Please.
So you got your ear to the streets. You find distressed properties. They can be distressed for a number of reasons. You're looking for distressed properties in high traffic areas. That's pretty much why, because your company, that just happens to be your focus, right?
Because and the reason why that's our focus is because we, as of right now in real estate, commercial real estate, if you're paying attention to what's happening in the office sector, your A class and B class office sectors, that's not a good business to be in. So we particularly deal with first generation service based retail, which means a lot of barbershops, event centers, even on our credit tenants, we deal more with your Family Dollars, your Rent-A-Centers, Dollar Trees. And then there's a lot of Hispanic businesses that are really coming into play. Huge in America right now, because the population is kind of changing. The demographics are definitely changing. So you have like your La Michoacanas, which are your ice cream places. So we also stick to another script, and is that we look at caffeine. What is it? Caffeine, sugar, and salt. If you stay around those businesses in commercial real estate, that's where you'll find your nickels and your quarters. Eventually they add up to dollars.
Interesting. Caffeine, sugar, and salt. Okay, so let's go back to what you mentioned earlier. You said A class and B class. Explain that. Like what the ones you stay away from.
Well, A class is, let's just say, downtown Chicago. A class, that's A class office space. Let's say high-end suburbs, office parks that are in high-end suburbs. If they're built from 2010, that's going to be pretty much A class. B class is going to be your older suburbs, and all this is based off demographics. When you're looking at your demographics, when you look at your age groups of communities that are literally, I would say 45. If the average age in a community is 45 and above, or sometimes even 50, I would say 50 and above, right? That means that you're in a neighborhood that was could have been homes built around 2000, 2008, 2012. Well, that's going to be that A class going into B class. And what I say about that is when you're looking at A class and B class properties, on the numerical end of that, you're looking at a property that's about maybe a 4 cap to a 6 cap. And when I say cap, do your class, do they understand what cap rates are?
Let's assume that they don't. Let's assume that they're learning. Just a general idea. You can do a big picture. But by the way, everybody, if you log into drboycerealestate.com, there is a discussion of all the terminology behind real estate. But if you don't mind, kind of giving an idea of what that would mean, like explaining like you explained to a 10th grader.
Just let's say, for instance, when we're looking at a cap rate, the cap rate is basically your yield of a property over 1 year. So if I'm looking at a property that costs, let's just say the property is $14 million, and let's just say in all collected rents, you take in $600,000 of that, then you divide 600 by 14, and that's a 4 cap.
But kind of like return on investment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I spend $1 million, I make 100,000. That's 10% of $1 million. So my cap rate would be about 10%. Is that
exactly? There you have it. You have it. So with that being said, we find that distressed properties make a lot more money than a Starbucks because
Really? Okay.
because if let's say for instance, right, if you had that 10 cap, what would you sell it for?
Hmm. With something with a cap rate of 10%?
Yeah, if you had if you spent 100, if you spent 1 million and you had a property generating 100,000 a year, what would you sell it for? I'm asking you a question, not
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would be some multiple of that cap rate, right? Is that how it works?
exactly.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, if I went to buy a Starbucks, I'm going to have to buy that property at now in the marketplace of Starbucks. You're going to buy it at literally at a 2 cap, which means that it's going to be a long time before you see some money.
Okay.
Let's just keep
So
it
just
simple.
give me let's do some quick math here. So let's say the Starbucks, when you say a 2 cap, let's say that Starbucks makes $500,000 a year. A
Mhm.
2 cap means what? That I pay twice the 500K, 2x that.
No, 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 no. If when a property, I don't have a calculator in front of me, boys,
Mhm.
but literally to keep it general, and we can go back to this or have your class go back to this because I don't have a calculator in front of me. What I'm trying to say is that we buy properties at high cap rates at a 12, which means that we're buying, there's little income, the income versus the price of the building, it's to
Mhm.
our benefit.
Right. Okay.
So buying a distressed property versus buying a Starbucks, if you bought a Starbucks, you're not going to see a return of investment for a while. And before we end, I will get a calculator and then run you back through this. I'm a calculator guy, so
Okay. Yeah, because I guess because I'm thinking about it in terms of like, so if I'm calculating cap rate on a property, I look at the price I'm willing to pay, but I base it on not the income that it's earning, but the income I believe it can earn. Right.
potentially, potentially.
Right. Okay. Because so if I think that, if I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if I do XYZ, I can increase the yield from this asset, right? I can get more out of this. I can milk this cow and get more milk out of the cow. Then I'm going to base my price on the cap rate I expect based on how much milk I can get out of the cow, right? So if I expect a cap rate of, say, I don't know, let's say 20%, um, and I believe I can get $200,000 a year out of this cow, then the most I might pay is 200,000 divided by a million, which would be 20%. That 20% cap rate. So I'll offer a million, and it doesn't even matter. Now, if it costs less than a million, then that's a deal for me, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay. But if it's more than a million, I say no, thank you.
I say no, thank you. Exactly.
Got it.
So that's why we choose to stay around distressed properties because ultimately we cut a lot of we cut our own deals or we make offers. And then that'll lead us that brings a segue into a lot of times we buy properties off of owner financing.
Okay. Now let's speak on that because I saw a question from one of the students about financing and funding, and believe me, that literally tends to be the number one question so many people have. And I want everybody to know, in the Black Business School, we just made a partnership with Nove Financial that has lots of relationships with banks that can sort of help those of you that are looking for that funding. They're a great Black-owned company, and I'll tell you guys more about that later. Let's talk about that financing piece. You said owner financing. Tell us more about that.
Owner financing is usually when you find a lot of these distressed properties. You may have an owner who, like I said earlier, he can't afford to do tenant improvements, so he has two vacancies. His parking lot is in bad condition. Place may need a roof, but he has let's just say two stores in that potential retail center that has been paying rent like clockwork. And then once again, with commercial real estate, when you build a business, people go to stores, the same store for 10, 20 years, right? So if you have a store that been a staple of the community, staple of the neighborhood, has been there for 20 years, great paying tenant, then hey, I'll stop by, look. And all this is public information, also how you look up properties. Like, I think for students nowadays, the internet is a great tool, but it's just that it's really a tool. It's not the end all. It's not, it is not the entire universe. A lot of stuff takes place with legwork,
Mm.
physical legwork. So when we're looking at financing, you may have an owner, and we do like real creative deals. That's something else that'll take a very long time because every deal could be different. But a lot of times, if you have a little capital, you can go to an owner and say, "Hey, look, you know what? I'll put this amount down, or let me come in and manage and remarket. I'll invest in the other 2 units that need to be fixed up. But I'd like to buy this building from you. And I need 5 years to buy it from you. I may need 3 years to buy it from you, but let me come in with a little capital. I'll get this thing up and running, and then I'll buy you out of it when I refinance. So that's just one way under the sun, boys. There's like I said, there's a lot of creative deal making, especially with, I would say, for new real estate investors going into financial institutions. It's very important to know how to cut deals, so that when you go and you sit down with a financial institution or with a bank, you're actually coming in the bank with an agreement, and you already have access to that particular property at your fingertips. And here's a tip for most younger students. It's a lot cheaper for you to go and approach an owner of a distressed property and bring that and do your due diligence, and then also get a deal with that owner. It's a lot cheaper for you to do a deal that way than have to go into a bank and bring 40%. Because a lot of times that's the barrier of entry to commercial real estate. It is a lot higher than residential. It is. So you're looking at 40%, 40% down payments on a $1 million building, that's $400,000, versus a building that could potentially be worth $1 million, that right now is underperforming. It may only be worth $400,000, but then you may take $40,000, cut a deal with the owner, structure the deal the way you pay him out of it in 36 months, 60 months, sometimes 12 months. But you structure your deal, you may have $40,000 in capital that can get the other 2 units in that particular retail space up and running, capital he don't have, and then you exit him out of it in you exit him out of it in 36 to 60, whatever you structure. But when it comes to funding, and I always say this to you, your local and your state banking institutions, that's your friend. Those are your friends. Bank of America, Chase, Huntington, those are not your friends.
Okay. So you're saying that the best, first of all, so it sounds like you said a couple of things. One, that if you're going to a bank, go to a local or a state bank to do these sorts of commercial real estate deals. Okay. So that's the first piece. Second piece, you said that you should be creative in terms of how you craft your deals. Now, what I'm trying to process is, let's say that if I find a property that I am, let's say I follow your formula, and I want to try to break this down to a step-by-step process for those who are just kind of beginning, so they can kind of, begin to look into this. So I go to a high traffic area with some distressed property that in an area where I want to be located. And I really would like to figure out how to make a deal, because I don't have a lot of cash or a lot of capital. So what I would just contact the owner and see if the owner is interested in selling, or what information do you think I should have before I even make that initial contact with the owner to try to take control of this property?
Well, let's go back to the first thing I said when we first started up. Your human resources, your relationships with contractors, master carpenters, your relationship with individuals, plumbers, your relationship with the skilled trade industry, that is also where you're going to make your money. So if you have the relationships already, and let's just say, for instance, you don't have a lot of capital, but there's a distressed property. When you approach that owner, you're looking for, it's steps to this. You're looking for a partnership before you can become an owner, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you can structure a partnership to get into this particular building, into this particular property, you and that owner can structure a deal to where he's agreed that you will exit him out of it in X amount of days. Now you can use your capital with your relationship with master carpenters, plumbers, whatever the building need, right? While he owns the building and you have your agreement put in place, then you're basically getting that building up and running, so that when you do go to a bank to technically refinance him out of it, at this point, you're avoiding having to come up with a huge amount of capital. So just in layman's terms, creative financing starts with you having the ability to cut a partnership with the current owner.
Okay. And so part of that leverage in that partnership, you use the word, this word we actually use a lot in the Black Business School lately, which is relationships. My wife is a relationship therapist, and we talk extensively. We have a whole department in the Black Business School called the Black Financial Therapy Department, which is based on mental health, but it's connected to relationships because we found that one of the challenges for building Black-owned businesses is our ability to maintain healthy relationships with each other, which include things like conflict resolution and just some of those soft skills, right? Building the right relationships and not letting a relationship problem derail your ability to make money, which I'm sure you have a lot to say about because I've had a relationship with you. I know what kind of person you are. And I've seen how you navigate in situations that might be awkward, uncomfortable, or whatever. And I can just tell everybody, just to be point blank, period. I like Cedric because he's not an asshole. He's a great guy. He's not. And you and I have both worked, like you worked actually in the entertainment industry for a little bit, and you've seen people that are the egomaniacs and the jerks and the prima donnas and disrespectful to other people, and they don't have good relationships. So they don't understand why. Even though you might be the hottest artist out here or the biggest actor, in Hollywood, while some people are just like, I refuse to work with you, and in fact, I'll even say a name. Last year at our convention, when I got that call from Kanye West, I remember I told an executive at a major company about him, and he said, yeah, Kanye calls me all the time. Don't talk to him. I don't deal with him. And this is a guy that signs multi-million-dollar deals, on a regular basis. He said, I'm not dealing with him because I know the relationship is going to go south at some point, and I'm not ready to put up with that. So you talked about that word relationships. So you're saying that when you go and you reach out to and I'm trying to draw a picture for everybody that's in here so we can all have some marching orders and understand what to do when we're done. So you're saying that when I go and I approach this owner of this distressed property in a high traffic area that I want to potentially take ownership of, I come in with a partnership mentality. Maybe the weight I'm bringing may not be money, but I'm bringing other forms of capital, meaning relationships with the skilled tradesmen, the master carpenters and stuff like that. And what am I saying? So I'm saying to the owner, what I'm saying, I'd like to partner with you in a deal where, where you agree they're going to exit out at some point, and I'm going to bring my skilled tradesmen in to go ahead and start making upgrades, or describe that a little bit better for me if you can.
Okay, so just to go in depth, right? Like I said, you have a retail space. Let's just say you have a small 4-unit retail space on a high traffic strip, right? Mm-hmm. He has two tenants who have been there for long term, and they've been there long term, right? But he also has 2 units that are basically empty, right? So you have to do your due diligence to figure out, hey, why are these 2 units? Why are they empty? Are they empty because of poor marketing? When you ride past, do we have a for rent sign or for lease sign that's just not visible? Because it may not be that he don't have capital. He could be poorly marketing. But when you're doing your due diligence, you have to look at all these different avenues. You got to look at, whether the property is marketed properly, whether he just don't have the capital to get the other 2 units up and running. But you use why is the parking lot beat up? Are the gutters in shape? So when I walk a property, I'm looking for a lot of different things, not just 1 or 2 different things. So basically, by the time I walk a property and take my notes, I'm looking at everything. I also know what properties in that area, in that same category, maybe a C-class property or D-class property. I also know what those leases are going for. And that's just something as simple as using using LoopNet and looking at the building down the street that's marketed properly, what are they leasing it for? So I'm looking at what they're getting per square foot. So now I know what you could get per square foot if your facade was better, if your parking lot was a little bit better, or if it was even marketed, or even if it was marketed better. So at that point, I'm reaching out to the owner, and then I'm gonna have a conversation with him as to, what's really going on with your property. And he could say, hey, well, you know what? I plan on doing it this summer. I'm not interested. Or he could say, tell you what, I've got 2 vacant spaces here. I can't afford to do these, to white box these units. So white box them to your students mean when you go in, you paint all the walls white, You put new toilets, new sinks, and whatever the flooring is, you may tear the flooring up, or it could be a building that was built before 1978 that's still there, that you don't touch the floor because you don't want to. If it's a lot of properties before 78 are going to have some level of asbestos. That's just what they use in flooring. Asbestos works like this. If it's not disturbed, you're good. But if you disturb it, you have to have a remediation, and that's EPA. So let's not go down that lane right now. But in speaking with that owner, what you're trying to do is, if you don't have a lot of capital up front, you're trying to strike a partnership with him to say, hey, listen, I'll get these other 2 units up and running. That's going to bring you 2 more units that's leased. I'll use my relationships, or I may use my own credit to do your part, to do the parking lot. But basically, I'm going to add value to this property with you agreeing that I'm going to pay you off and I'm going to buy you out of this in 36 months. Pretty much that's what you're doing. Because at this point now, when you get the other 2 units up and running, whatever monetary amount that you guys agreed that you would exit him out on, once you get the other 2 units up and running, then let's say you don't do the parking lot. But now when you go to the bank, you've got 4 great tenants. The last 2 tenants that you added are basically paying market value rent, because you've also made promises to them in your lease that, hey, I'm redoing the parking lot, and that's a guarantee that you give them. And at the end of the day, what the average tenant doesn't understand is that when you do that parking lot and you tell them it's going to be done in 24 to 36 months, realistically, they're paying for it. You know what I'm saying? So they're paying for it. So you make that promise. So in 36 months, you go to the bank, and now because you're a partner, or you're a co-owner, or whatever the legal language for the state that you reside in, at that point, you're doing a refinance. Are you class familiar with that? Purchasing versus refinancing. At that point, you're doing a refinance. So you may have put yourself into $1 million property with $30,000 out of your pocket, because you knew the people who could come in, do the paint, do the drywall, get this bad looking unit up to spec, fresh white walls. You might put a fresh floor in it. You made new toilets, new sinks, new ceiling tile. So because of your relationships, you basically just went to an owner. You're making him money for 36 months. You're getting a small return on your 30 to 40,000 in that time. But at the end of the day, you just added value to an asset that you're going to purchase in 36 months with little cash out of your pocket.
Okay. So by the way, everybody, this is Cedric Finley. And Cedric Finley, you are the vice president. And what's the name of your company? I got to write that down.
Arnold Meyer.
Arnold Meyer
Commercial Real Estate. Just go to arnoldmeyer.com.
Okay. All right. So arnoldmeyer.com. All right. So let me ask you this. So you've spoken a lot about deal making, and you've talked about it in a pretty sophisticated way. How do you learn how to do that? Like, these are not, I assume you did not learn this in public school. They don't teach us how to do real estate deals in public school. They teach us how to go get a job. What led you to your pathway for you to get into this field and to do what you do on a daily basis? And if you could go to school all over again as a kid, or if I had a kid and I wanted my kid to be able to do what you do, what kinds of training would I want them to have?
You definitely have to have an understanding of business, but I'm a creative person. So, it's all deal making. Commercial real estate, which is it's just night and day from residential. In residential, you're going to go apply for a mortgage. You're going to get your RESPA package before you close. You go through it. You make all the checks and balances. Everything is done. You go to a title company. You just purchase the house, right? Commercial real estate doesn't work like that. It's the wild, wild west. So ultimately, I was really blessed to be around a deal maker who's a founder of our company and a great friend of mine. And we met when I was in the mortgage business because he was in residential real estate. And at one point he owned 300-400 homes, and when he got out of that, I did the mortgages for a lot of those properties, and we just got a great relationship. We didn't know each other from man on the moon. I work for a mortgage. I work for a mortgage company, and at that time, we would buy leads from different companies, and you have your hot leads and you have your cold leads. But at the mortgage company, the leads would come over at 9 a.m. The owner of the company would take the leads off of the printer and hand them out, in accordance, and you go work your leads. So I started doing deals with my guy, and man, when he decided to transition into commercial real estate, he called me and was like, "Hey, man, you know what? You were really good at what you were doing. I'm building my team. Once again, human resources. I'm building my team, and I think that this might be what you want to do. Unfortunately, the finance and commercial real estate was a little more. It was more technical than what I wanted to deal with, because at that time, I really wasn't used to building out complex financial models, because at the end of the day, I'm giving you guys what you would say the elevator pitch of it, or the elevator version. I look at very sophisticated spreadsheets, and we have two guys at our company that are Wharton guys, and they're very smart. So at the end of the day, I can see a property through, because we don't buy and sell anything. We buy and we keep. So ultimately, we have to buy them right? So that's how I got into commercial real estate. I was invited in. Didn't work out on the financial side, but because I'm well traveled, and I didn't mind traveling. So at the end of the day, I've bought properties now across 7 states. So I'm the first line of offense when it comes to finding property.
So you said your company buys and you keep the real estate. You don't sell it. So why not? Why not sell it? Why keep it?
Cash flow.
Okay.
At the end of the day, if you're buying if you're buying distressed properties, and it's hard to replace cash flow, right? I mean, that's a question, but I'm not answering it for you. But I mean, how many people? If you got a $6 million property, how many? Let's be real. What who do you really attract to a property at $6 million that's really making capital for you? You've got to find a sophisticated buyer who don't need to make money, who just want these pieces of property for their overall portfolio. So that's when you get into your McDonald's and your Starbucks. The guys who own those properties, typically, they're not into those projects. They're not in those properties to make money. They're into those properties to make a small amount of money. But that's just a great place to hold your money. So I would advise any younger student, owning a Starbucks. It may look glamorous, but do your numbers on it. That's for a guy. Those properties are for guys with money already.
Okay. So let's go back. I want to dig a little deeper into that question I asked earlier, right? Like, if I wanted to build the perfect, in your view, the perfect commercial real estate investor who does what you do, what are some places you think they might go in terms of training they might get, courses they might take that might help them become really good at that sort of thing? I mean, because you talked about things like deal making and just these skills that, there's no class I ever took in high school or college that shows you how to identify a distressed property in a high traffic neighborhood, approach the owner, make a deal to fix up the property and stuff like that, where you're a partner, but then you're going to buy out a little bit later. Where would I kind of learn all this? So are there like real estate training camps that you really like, that maybe you went through one that helped you get to this point, or did you just kind of pick it up as you went along?
I picked up as I went along. I mean, if there was a school that taught me what I know now at my age, I would definitely have my daughter enrolled.
Okay.
So a lot of this comes from basically just getting a job in the field at some capacity. It could be a small capacity. Um, when I was doing mortgages, man, I always wished that I was the guy on the other side of the phone. So I was making money off of these guys, but when I'm listening to what they're doing with with homes and the multifamilies, when I'm listening to what they're doing, I always wanted to be on the other side of that phone.
Mm.
And that being said, because I'm the guy that's approving, I'm getting them money to go do these real creative deals, and I'm a creative, so it was just fascinating to me. So once again, I got the opportunity to get into commercial real estate from the financial side, but that wasn't me for two reasons. Once again, it was really complex, and then two, I just found myself wanting to be that guy that's making the deal versus the guy that's funding the deal.
Mm. Well, let me ask you this. So when you calculate traffic count, how do you calculate the traffic count? That's what Carla wants to know.
Okay, well, Carla, go to your state Department of Transportation website, and if you go to that state Department of Transportation, state DOT site, it's gonna you put in a street address. It's gonna give you a map. It's gonna show you. It's gonna give you a map like a Google map. It's gonna show you how many cars pass there, and then some states are so sophisticated now to where you can actually look and they'll tell you how many cars run at what particular times a day. So that's one. And then the second thing, I'm gonna go back because when I'm talking to you guys and I'm saying, hey, you approach an owner, I'm pretty sure you guys are wondering, like, how do you find an owner? So with that being said, that's public information also. So you go to your county, you go to the county tax assessor's office, and most of the time these it's going to be registered in LLC. So there's going to be an agent. And a lot of times the corporate agent or LLC's agent is going to be an attorney's office. So you would contact the attorney will get you in contact with the owner, and then you go from there. So those are the two ways that you find a property, and those are also the ways that you figure out if this is a property that you want.
Okay. Now where would I go to find distressed commercial properties? You said you just go to you keep your ear to the street, that kind of thing. Is that sort of how you okay? And go ahead, please.
Oh no! First, the first way you can do this from a standpoint of doing it without any costs is go to loopnet.com. Okay. LoopNet is pretty much the Zillow for commercial property, and you can go through the filters, and I'll tell you to look at distressed properties. Filter it out. Put in a filter of, when it asks you about cap rate, put in a filter of 10, minimum 10, and then that's going to filter out and get you that's your first starting point. So let's just say, for instance, right, I'm in Indianapolis tonight, and we have a meeting in the office, and somebody that someone knows said, hey man, you guys need to come out here, look at property. This is what's happening. That's one of the reasons why I ended up going out to Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We had business in Oklahoma City, but our insurance agent for the last 11 years, him and his wife, they relocated to Tulsa. And he said, hey man, listen, Tulsa is exactly what you want. It's exactly like Indianapolis. It's exactly what you're looking for. Come out here. So I went out there for 2 days, and I looked at a lot of different properties in Tulsa. But let's just say, for instance, I don't have the ability to travel. So somebody say, hey man, listen, you want to, I think you can find what you're looking for in Tulsa. You would go to LoopNet. You would, let's say, filter out 10 caps and over.
Hey, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we go on a field trip? What do you say? Why don't we go to LoopNet? Just mess around with it a little bit. Okay.
Just find any random city.
Okay. All right. Let's pick you said Tulsa, right?
Yeah.
How's Tulsa? All right. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, we're here. All right. Now, what might we look for here on this page?
First off, go to where it says for lease. Go to for sale. Now, I'm gonna tell you something that's very important about when you go to for sale. We're gonna look right, and then we're gonna go back to for lease, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. But let's go to property types. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to filter this. Go to property types. Okay, so put retail, put shopping center, scroll up. We can just start there. Let's keep it simple. Go retail, go to shops. Okay. Now
Right.
go to building size.
Okay, building size. Here we go. Okay.
Let's do a maximum. This say this is your first property. Let's do a maximum 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
This is going to be a small retail center. 5,000 square.
Oh man, hold on. Give me a second. Let me. They mess with you. They get you started, and then they, what's it real? Let me see if I got an account here. I might have an account. They asked me to log in, or they're saying log in or sign up. So let me see what we got here. All right.
Just in case you don't, let's just go back and let's just leave the building size out of it. But once again, once you start getting specific, it's a little bit different.
No. I need a LoopNet account anyway. If I don't have one, I need to set it up. So let me go and say, keep talking. I'm gonna get us back in.
Well, we're gonna go to our building size, and the reason why is because at 5,000 square feet, if let's just say, for instance, you have 4 or 5 units, well, the size of the average barbershop is anywhere from 900 square feet to 1,250. So you want to start small.
Okay. Right.
So how many people have heard of right now in retail, your Bed Bath and Beyonds, all these major big box retailers are going out of business.
Yep.
You want to be stuck with 30,000 square feet.
Ooh.
So you start small.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, by the way, I did get us back in. So
Okay.
let me take us back to the page. That's Bed Bath and Beyond. It's really always fascinating to me, Cedric, when I see a business that looks like it's powerful and doing well and making tons of money and they go out of business. It almost speaks to the excesses of capitalism where people just want to push it to the limit all the time. Like if you're generating billions in revenue every year, I don't know. I understand how you can go bankrupt, but I don't understand it, or like even right now, Disney, this isn't real estate, but Disney is losing billions of dollars on streaming. How the hell how's that happening? Like, it seems like you can cut your annual budget, by $1 billion, your content budget by $1 billion and still keep enough subscribers to make a profit. But it almost seems like with some of these companies, they push things to the limit and then they get in this financial distress. I don't know. Maybe it's
I'm not smart enough I'll make this comment, but don't hold me to it. I just think that America is built off of leveraging everything. So a lot of these businesses are leveraged off of potential income. And then when there's a significant change in the market or in culture, they're stuck holding the bag.
Yeah. And this is actually why, in the Black Business School, one thing where I stop people is there's many cases where they'll say, you're trying to say capitalism is the answer for the Black community. And I say, no, it's not. Capitalism in its most extreme, undisciplined form is very destructive. It leads to booms and busts. It leads to a lot of crash. There's a whole documentary that everybody should watch called Boom, Bust, Boom, where they talk about how just the culture of capitalism creates these extremes of way up and these way downs. And I'm more of a fan of something that's a little bit smoother. I don't need all the extreme ups. If that's going to avoid me all the pain of a complete collapse where I got to go fire all my friends and destroy people's lives because I got to kill their jobs because I decided to push the gas pedal to the floor.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm more of a conservative investor in that way. But anyway, let's get back to it. Okay, so we got under 5,000 feet. We got multiple property types selected. Tulsa, Oklahoma. What do I do next?
Let's see. Right now, we got some markers. So let's scroll up.
Okay, scroll up like let's see. Okay, give me a second here.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take a look at what they have right now. Okay, so now this is what I like. Go to this 12502 to 12510 East 21st Street.
Okay. Now, before I move into it, what makes that place jump out at you?
Well, it's 4,800 square feet. It's $500,000. So that's literally what, 100 a foot. So So it's built in 1980. Just from glancing, if I'm out riding, this is what I'm going to stop and look at first. So it looks like the parking lot is, just from right now, I can't really tell until you go into it, but that's typically what we're looking for. Okay. You have Life Chiropractic. So let's scroll up. Yeah. So there's Mills Chiropractic. There's Ryan. Okay. Okay. So now let's read this. 21st Street is I know for a fact that's a major thoroughfare in Tulsa.
Okay.
Retail office. So now, okay, so scroll up. So let's look at some numbers. So let's scroll up a little bit. So now 80, yep, 104 foot, multiple one. So stop, very important. Your first properties never go into two-story buildings.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason, and so because in business, keeping upstairs, and Lord forbid you buy your first building that has an elevator, that it's my personal preference. We only look at one-story buildings. It gets extremely expensive when you start redoing elevators and escalators. Extremely expensive. Those guys are at the high end of the food chain in the skilled trade industry. So now look at the amenities. The first one, dedicated turn lane. Your ingress and your egress on a building is everything. It's everything. So it's telling you it has a pylon.
Hey, pylon? Explain.
Pylon is the sign. So when you're driving down the street and you looking at an AT&T, the sign that's at the edge or the corner of the parking lot that has all the businesses that are listed, that is a pylon.
Okay.
That's your pylon sign. So it's telling me right now that this building has a pylon. It's also saying that you signage. So signage with city ordinances are going to vary across the United States. Something as simple as having a digital sign, you may have to get a permit for. So I would have to look more into what they're expressing by signage. But it's two things that I like right here: that dedicated turn lane. How many of you are literally, are in your car and you want to stop by a store, or you see a store that you might want to go into, but it's just too hard to get in, or you got to go around, you got to go turn around and come back. So that ingress egress is very, very important. So to have a dedicated turn lane on 21st Street, I know I can work with that. So now let's look at go to hit traffic.
Okay.
Yeah. So you look at the map. So now let's look what the traffic counts are.
Okay.
Okay. See, there we get traffic counts. So on 21st Street, it's a major thoroughfare. So I know I'm getting 16,000 cars are going to pass by this building in a day's time. So Tulsa is not Atlanta. It's not Chicago, where you're going to have your 30,000 car counts, but 16,000 cars passing by business in Tulsa for a building that's $500,000. See, I'm interested in that. So now there are your traffic counts. So
let me ask you this: what's the time frame? Is that 24 hours?
Yeah, that's going to be 24 hours. So you're getting so basically in a week's time, I mean, you're getting 16,000 times 5. You're getting so if I open a daycare, if I put a daycare in there, so when you're dealing with when you buy this building, you got to find tenants. So these are all the things you want to market to your tenant. Hey, if you start a daycare center, you got 16,000 eyeballs. That means that's a major thoroughfare that people are going back and forth to work. Now, if you go right here to the corner, you see where you have it's 129th and 21st. So now, if you go up a little bit, you got between 14 and 15,000 that passed the major intersection right there. So let's say for instance, you have the ability to have your business in front of even more people with a pylon and whatever they mean by that signage. Now you're looking at a building that could be viable to you. Now go back to the building itself. Okay. Because it looks to me like there's some vacancies.
Okay.
Right. So at the end of the day, this is the perfect property to get involved in if you want to start getting into commercial real estate. And I mean, it's ultimately there's some things that I know about this that maybe you cannot see at this particular time. So realistically, I know for this, it's going to be a barbershop. It's not going to be someone who has a boutique who want to have window and who want to have clothes in her window, because I can't, it's an older building. So unless I wanted to go in and change it to all glass fronts, which we wouldn't do, you just match the businesses that you want to market to the building that you have to work with. And that's where it starts. So, but that's just a clean example. That's just one clean example of, if me and you were riding together, I'm going to pull in and see what's going on with this business. Even if I didn't know it was on LoopNet, I'm going to look at the fact that it looks kind of vacant, and look at the facade. It looks like it was built in 1980.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it does. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. You mentioned on some notes that you sent over to me about some talking points you wanted to cover. You said something about Miss Dirt.
Yeah.
What is that? MS Dirt.
Miss Dirt is literally that acronym. It sums the entire commercial business up into just that acronym. Miss Dirt. That's your best friend. That's the hottest chick in the party. That's the girl you want to go home with. Whatever you want to call it, right? But basically, Miss Dirt is maintenance, sewage, and then dirt is delinquencies, insurance, repairs, and taxes. That's the business.
Okay. So maintenance, sewage, delinquencies, insurance, repair. Did you say repairs and taxes?
Repairs and taxes.
Interesting. Okay. Miss Dirt. Interesting.
Dirt.
Okay. So everybody write that down.
Now, here's what's important about sewage in commercial buildings. In a commercial building, because you have multiple, you have multiple units. So it's not like a house where you may have a house with 4 bedrooms. There's only one. When it comes off of the line from the neighborhood, when they build a neighborhood, you got one line going to the house. Everything's split off of that, right? And then you have one bill for your home. Well, when you buy a retail space, you have 4 lines coming from the street, because you have to have 4 separate meters. Each unit has to have in other words, you don't want to be in the business of collecting, you don't want to be in the business of paying water bills and then having to collect it back from your tenant. So that's the reason why we just use the word sewage, but typically that's what it is. So now you got an older building, your inspection needs to encompass looking at the condition of the pipes when you buy that building. Because trust me, a busted pipe on a commercial building, this is where I'm saying the skilled trade industry is so important now, because when we have to call plumbers out to take care of a problem like that, or any kind of pipe burst or some things like that, first off, you can't have your tenant out of business. So it has to get done. So any type of miscues in older buildings like that, you're starting at $3,500 that could end up being $20,000. It just depends on how much you have to replace. And the city does not touch anything past the sidewalk, past their right of way. So that's why we miss dirt. That's why sewage is so important.
Wow. That's very, very powerful stuff. Okay. So everybody, by the way, this is Cedric Finley. He is the vice president of, make sure I say this right. Arnold Meyer. Is that, I can't read my own hand right. Arnold Meyer Consulting.
Commercial real estate.
Commercial real estate. Okay. Because I can't, I know the word started with a C. Arnold Meyer Commercial Real Estate. And we're talking about how to get into commercial real estate. And I'm not going to take too much of Cedric's time. He was gracious enough to join us tonight. If you want to see not just the recordings of this conversation, but all the others that we've had, as well as all the material and curriculum, just log in at drboycerealestate.com. The first month is free. If you haven't logged in yet, our last real estate discussion was in there. We're going to have another one in a couple of weeks as well. And so let's answer. I'm gonna answer 4 more questions, or I'm gonna ask you 4 more questions. Then we can bounce on out. Barbara wants to know: do you take on real estate investment trust investors?
Typically we don't. We have partnerships with some guys, but it's very selective. And I don't make those decisions. But we, there are some, sometimes we will, but very rarely. Like I said, we're basically a small company that has became a mid-sized company over the past 3 years. So we still kind of operate in our own space, and kind of like stay out of the way. We watch typically what has happened to a lot of your bigger real estate companies like Simon and Sandor. Those guys have problems right now.
Yeah, they do. And I'll tell you what, it's the more I just deal with money and partnerships and all that, everybody listening, just know that taking on an investor is like almost like getting married to somebody in a way where you don't want to marry the wrong person. Just because somebody comes along and offers you cash to do something, that doesn't mean it's a good partnership for you. If it's the wrong kind of partner, it could go very bad. And it's not even just about the money, it's really just about the temperament of that investor. If you're playing a long game and you get an investor who isn't used to the ups and downs of whatever industry you're investing in, that can create problems because something goes wrong. Next thing you know, they're like, "I want my money back," and that's that's why they have laws that make sure that you take money from qualified investors who really understand what they're getting into. And we've seen, like, for example, when we saw just some things that happened with the Tulsa real estate fund and all that, one of the biggest mistakes I think that they made was they took a lot of money from unqualified investors. And so when things didn't go well, it became just kind of chaotic. So I encourage everybody, if you take money or invest money, make sure that you really understand what you're getting into. And that's why we walk away from most money. 99% of the money that we've been offered in Boyce Watkins Enterprises, I've turned down because I had to sit and say, yeah, this money, it will be helpful, but do I really want to marry this person in this way or marry this organization in this way? And I'm telling you guys, just, it's tough. This next question is, can you repeat the website? Sharon wants to ask, can you repeat the website that shows traffic flow in different areas? What was that website again?
That's going to be the Department of Transportation website for whatever state you live in.
Okay, Department of Transportation website. Okay, 2 more questions. How do you find tenants? Asked Carla Freeman.
Man, anything from Facebook Marketplace to our A-class tenants we may find off LoopNet. To be perfectly honest with you, word of mouth.
All right, perfect.
Word of mouth.
All right. And Rashad Marsh is one of our esteemed electricians. He says he's an electrical contractor in California. He'd like to know, what advantage do I have in the commercial real estate industry as an electrical contractor in California? I think that would be pretty significant. What do you think?
Oh, so that's a great question, because I'm gonna try to answer your question, but I got a question to ask you. What we're dealing with here in the Midwest is that the infrastructure is so far behind that I know here in the Midwest we are at such high stress levels when it comes to finding electricians. We're just at we're at an extreme shortage. So I'm going to ask you, is that not the case in California? I mean, as far as being an electrician or in that field, is that not the case?
Great. That's a great question. Rashad said, yes, it is.
Okay. So with that being said, Rashad, I'm in California quite often, and the infrastructure in California, you can really live life with an electric car, with a Tesla or any of the electric car options you have in America now. You can actually function with that vehicle in California. Well, guess what? In Indiana and in Illinois, outside of Chicago, you can't. So a lot of the guys who typically would be available for commercial or residential real estate, residential real estate that are electricians, they're getting contracted out and subcontracted out by bigger companies that have deals with these states and have bigger deals with building different type of infrastructure for electric cars and other things. So being an electrician, I know here in Indiana, you're pretty much writing your own checks. It just depends on how much you want to work. Your advantage once again, in a partnership is that, let's say, for instance, Boyce, you just spoke about real estate investment trust and relationships. I prefer to manage an asset than manage expectations. So as an electrician, if you partner with an HVAC guy, what I'm telling you now is that if the two of you guys had any knowledge or the skill set to start cutting deals, you just got your two biggest expenses like off the map right there. You're done. Because those are two of my biggest costs are electrical, HVAC. I mean, like HVAC is just, I mean, we're just the industry is at a complete shortage. So from the onset of this conversation, I just told you guys the most important thing about being in commercial real estate is your relationships, and your human resources is everything. So let's say, for instance, you know how many buildings that are out here right now that can't handle that are not up to electrical code or electrical specifications. A lot of these buildings, like the building you just looked at from 1980, guess what? That building probably can't take the load of a laundromat or a beauty shop for today. It probably couldn't handle that load. So Rashad, imagine what I go through when I buy one of these older buildings, and then I've got to handle the load of a small grocery store, which we're in a great time in America for first generation immigrants. America was built off of immigration. So while we see all these different things that knock immigration serves me well, especially first generation immigrants that are going in small business. So Rashad, imagine if I got to go into this building and I got to pay you to come and replace all the breaker boxes or rewire this entire building. Imagine what you're going to charge me versus you providing the labor and doing it yourself for yourself. See, you just killed a lot of your costs right there. So that's your benefit, is getting with a guy who understands HVAC. All you need on your team right now is someone who understands HVAC, because you can wire. If most HVAC guys have the electrician, but if you're handling a building, you got a guy that's handling the HVAC, where I got to start from zero and go find you guys. You're starting one leg up. I mean, I hope I'm saying this to you clear.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the reason I got excited is because every now and then I get excited when I just see a vision in terms of a massive economic opportunity. What I want to, and this is, I think, a great point for us to kind of finish the conversation with, so everybody can kind of have implementable gems and information and everything else. A lot of people don't know the way Donald Trump's family got so wealthy was because his father, Fred, was he used to fix homes for real estate investors. As I don't know if he did carpentry or some other sort of skill. And he said, wait a minute, they're hiring me to come in and fix up their properties, and they're making all this money. If I learn, it's easier for me to learn what they know how to do than it is for them to learn what I know how to do. Right. So he went and he learned how to make the deals, and he didn't have a lot of cash at first. Eventually he got the money, but in the beginning he didn't have money, but he had another form of capital that I want you all to really focus on, called human capital. And as Cedric has mentioned, human resources is a form of human capital. So with Rashad being, an electrical contractor, and again, he probably knows HVAC guys, right? You get together, y'all pick up the deal making aspect of, making these deals, and just know you're not stepping to the table without capital. You may not have money, but you got plenty of capital, right?
Listen,
there you go.
Imagine you and your team going talking to an owner with a distressed property versus me going talking to an owner of a distressed property. I'm using capital. I'm using money and human capital. Your guy, and I'm using my capital to hire you.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, put your team together, you can cut deals a hell of a lot quicker than I can. Excuse me, me for what I'm just saying. But I will also say this: one of the most fascinating, one of the best books I've read is The Art of the Deal. Because when you go back through that book and you look at the fact that Donald used to look at Manhattan and used to say, man, I want to do deals over there, because his dad ended up owning a bunch of tenements, basically projects in Cincinnati and in Queens. So when Donald used to look at the Manhattan skyline, he used to always say, man, I want to do deals over there. And the way he cut his first deal was a way that I'm very familiar with. That's another long-winded conversation, maybe not for now, but at the same time, though, that book was really a great book to read.
It was. It was.
It was like being in the driver's. It was like hanging out with a deal maker when he's running you through how he cut all these deals to come from basically. We're not going to say nothing. I mean, but what he ended up being was way away from what he started out as.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's 100% true. And by the way, I see Ray Daniel says, "What about my question?" Sorry, Ray, I didn't see your question, Ray. I answered all the questions over in the Q&A section, so I apologize if I missed it. But what I'll do is I will ask Ray's question. I'm gonna find it in the chat. This is going to be the last question for tonight. But I will say this though, I would encourage everybody, get past all the politics of whether you like Donald Trump or not. I'm gonna tell you guys, I'm personally not interested in who you're voting for in the next election. I don't care. That's up to you. I can just tell you, though, that before Donald Trump got very political, there were things you could actually learn about how he did real estate deals. I think he bought a $400 million hotel at 28 years old. And, and some people say, oh, it's just because he was rich and this and the other. No, most rich people can't go buy a $400 million hotel. You have to make deals. And he was able to somehow make those deals. And so I would say, chew the meat, spit out the fat, learn what you can learn. And then the rest you can just throw to the side, So I'm going to ask this last question from Ray Daniel. He'll get the honor of getting the last question to you. And the question is, what's your experience in wholesaling commercial real estate and the profit margins you can make with said business model? Is it as advantageous as holding the real estate? So what's your experience in wholesaling commercial real estate? Have you done much of that? Or
it's funny that Ray asked that question because no, we don't wholesale. I don't sell. Being in the business of selling real estate right now is just not a good business to be in, period. So trying to flip properties, I would say no. But Ray, what I can say is that in the art of the deal, the first deal that Donald Trump actually had come to fruition was wholesaling his contract on that 40, I think it's a 42nd Street Railroad, that piece of land that he ended. That basically, to answer your question, no, we don't do no wholesaling. I don't really have a lot of information to give you on that. But what I will say though is that